There's nothing more freeing than being on the open road. The feeling of the wind howling around you as you ride off into the horizon is something that all of us riders are looking for.
If you ride the motorcycle, you're like a different person.
When you ride naman kasi, you see a lot of different people. Looking forward ka doon sa destination na pupuntahan mo. I enjoyed it a lot.
When I ride the motorcycle, lahat ng kasulok-sulukan, napuntahan ko lahat.
Every single ride has its own special memory.
Ang number one sa akin, pure riding comfort.
Join me for this trip. I'm Paolo Abrera, and this is Ride Tribe.
Bawal muna ang pakikipag-usap sa loob ng mga tren ng MRT. Some residents are back on the streets of Sampaloc, Manila after the 48-hour lockdown. Pagtaas ng mga kaso ng COVID-19 dito sa bansa. Naglagay na ng mga improvised barriers para sa mga nagbibisikleta. Typhoon Ulysses, a super typhoon. Christina Tulak, CNN Philippines.
Ako si Ruth Cabal. Ito ang Newsroom ngayon. Balita at serbisyo para sa Pilipino. Sinabi na rin ng gobyerno na kailangang paigtingin ang contact tracing. Maraming buhay ang nawala sa pananalasa ng sunod-sunod na bagyo. Usapan natin yan kasama si Education Undersecretary Diosdado San Antonio. Lulunsad bukas ang Green EDSA Movement. Ika nga, if you can't pay it back, pay it forward sa pagtatayo ng isang community pantry. Narito mabilis sa pasada ng mga balitang dapat niyong malaman. Ito ang Newsroom ngayon.
This is News Night, where we go above and beyond the headlines. I'm Pia Ontiveros. Tonight on the program, hundreds of thousands of public utility drivers struggling with 10 straight weeks of fuel price hikes are set to finally get financial help from the government. But a transport coalition says this may not be enough to prevent a planned nationwide strike next week. Delta and Omicron variants combined, World Health experts are looking into a hybrid version of these coronavirus variants detected in some European countries. And armies have the permission to dance today as K-pop sensation BTS hits the concert stage in its home base for the first time in over 2 years. As pump prices continue to skyrocket, the government is releasing tomorrow the first installment of the fuel subsidy for public utility drivers. Amor Santos tells us some transport groups are now putting their fare hike petition in the backseat.
4 transport groups fought for a 5 peso increase in the minimum fare of jeepneys in Metro Manila, Central Luzon, and Southern Tagalog. Pending any decision, they called on regulators to revert the fare to 10 pesos. But after a meeting with Transportation Secretary Arthur Tugade on Wednesday, Pasang Mazda is setting aside the petition for now. Transport leader Ka Obet Martin says Tugade promised to double the fuel subsidy for drivers and include traditional jeepneys in the government's service contracting program for a more stable income.
Sobra-sobra po yan. Hindi na aragabyado ang transport sector dyan. Tatagal lang ang mga 4 na buwan ng service contracting. Hopefully, by the time tapos na po ang gera sa Ukraine at Russia at normalize na ang presyo sa sector.
Acting Budget Secretary Tina Canda confirms the Economic Development Cluster has agreed to double the allocation for fuel subsidy to 5 billion pesos. The first half will be released by Friday, the other 2.5 billion pesos in April. Transportation Undersecretary Steve Pastor says qualified drivers will each receive 6,500 pesos for the first tranche, but no definite amount yet for the second round of aid. He says the department is waiting for data on the number of tricycle drivers and full-time drivers of ride-hailing apps and delivery services.
Ang tricycles po sa LGU yan at yung mga ride-hailing apps po sa DTI po yan.
Okay.
So we are awaiting the list. Once we receive the funding po, we can distribute a day or two sa ating mga chistel nitong pasada card.
But not all transport groups are satisfied with the government's pronouncements. Liga ng Transportasyon at Operators sa Pilipinas or LTOP is not taking a detour from its proposed 6 peso fare hike.
Ang tanong ko, yung bang pangako ay pwedeng dalhin sa palengke para makabili ng bigas at makabili ng ulam? Diba? May pamalingki ba nila yung pangako?
Ayaw naming gawin ito, ma'am. Pero pag tumaas pa, ma'am, wala rin kaming gagawin sa biyahe, wala nang kita.
The National Public Transport Coalition warns drivers nationwide may be forced to take a more drastic action, staging a transport strike if fuel prices will again soar on March 15th, unless the government suspends excise taxes. Amor Santos, CNN Philippines.
Hundreds of thousands of PUV drivers are set to benefit from the fuel subsidy, but there are millions of tricycle drivers nationwide, and they're hoping they will not be left out in the distribution of cash aid, as they are equally having difficulty because of expensive fuel. Here's George Cahilas with the story.
Tricycle drivers here in Barangay Santo Niño, Parañaque City, like Gacela Ruben, are feeling the pinch. They can barely cope with fuel becoming expensive in a matter of weeks. Ruben says his take-home has been cut by more than half, from 500 pesos before the pandemic, and that the smaller amount comes from working for 12 hours.
Hindi yung nagsasapat ng kita ho namin sa biyahe ho namin. Ang pasahero pa ho namin, pa utay-utay pa ho rito. Hindi pa ho sapat.
In Eastern Visayas, tricycle drivers have asked for a substantial fare increase. From 9 pesos, they want a minimum fare for at least 15 pesos. As a stopgap measure, the government will release a one-time 5 billion peso fuel subsidy for public utility vehicle drivers. This amount would mean each of the over 377,000 drivers will receive 13,000 pesos. The 2022 budget law specifically identified tricycle drivers as among recipients of the fuel subsidy. House Ways and Means Committee Chairperson Joey Salceda says tricycle drivers number more than 4 million nationwide. In Parañaque City alone, Mayor Edwin Olivares says the local government counts around 14,000 tricycle units.
Kailangan isama naman yung sektor ng tatlong gulong kasi affected na sila eh. Hindi lang itong ating pagtaas ng gasolina, pati pa nung pandemic. Ngayon lang ako nakaka-recover ng konti dahil nga alert level 1 ng Metro Manila. Tapos ito na naman yung ating increase ng ating gasoline natin.
So how will government fund the subsidy for tricycle drivers? Salceda says the president should declare a state of economic crisis to dip into the calamity fund for such purpose. Even presidential candidate Senator Ping Lacson is calling on the president to convene a special session of Congress to pass measures that will help people cope with costly fuel.
Pwede pa rin nilang increase. Pero dapat talaga i-cover lahat kasi lahat yan may bituka eh. Lahat may pamilya. Bakit tayo maglilimit lamang doon sa ipopera natin yung TODA? Gutom din yun.
Tricycle drivers like Ruben hope help will come soon as the crisis unfolds and the future remains uncertain. George Cahiles, CNN Philippines.
Some oil companies are offering a reprieve from the weekly price hikes. Petrogas is slashing fuel prices until Sunday. It's cutting the cost of gasoline by 5 pesos and 85 centavos per liter and diesel by 3 pesos and 60 centavos per liter. Petrogas says this is to minimize the impact of price hikes on motorists. And this one's only valid until today. Petron is giving its value card and super driver card holders a chance to earn points that would translate to a 2 peso per liter discount on all fuel products. Well, after a series of fuel price hikes, expect electricity charges to follow this month. Energy distributor Meralco will impose a 6 centavo per kilowatt-hour increase, which is equivalent to a 13 pesos add-on for those consuming 200 kilowatt-hours per month. Meralco explains suppliers are charging more for power generation. This is the first power rate hike after 2 consecutive reductions this year. Meralco warns of more power rate movements in the coming months. The world market expects oil prices to remain expensive as tension between Ukraine and Russia escalate.
Dinifer na 500 million in terms of the generation cost, that's 18 centavos. So yan ay i-recover over 3 months starting April. Plus yung additional distribution through up na refund na in-implement namin based sa order ng ERC. So yung mga factors na yan nakatulong para to keep rates somehow manageable, no?
So that this will be reflected in the May generation charge. So if there is any effect of the increase in world crude oil prices, we will feel it in the Malampaya prices starting May generation charge.
A nuclear plant in Ukraine has been disconnected from the power grid following the takeover by Russian forces. Authorities say the Chernobyl nuclear power plant lost its electricity supply on Wednesday. A dangerous leak could happen if the generators are not sustained within 48 hours. About 210 people working in Chernobyl could be affected. Ukrainian Foreign Minister Dmytro Kuleba has called for a ceasefire to restore power supply at the plant. In 1986, a reactor explosion at the nuclear power plant killed 31 people. 3 people were killed after Russian troops attacked a maternity hospital in the city of Mariupol in Ukraine in what was supposed to be a ceasefire. Authorities say more than a dozen others were injured. The bombing happened despite a 12-hour ceasefire proposed by Moscow to help civilians flee to safety. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky accused Russia of genocide as he appealed to NATO to drive Russian forces from his nation's skies. Meanwhile, more humanitarian corridors will be opened in several parts of Ukraine, but it is still unclear if this has been agreed upon with Russia. Almost 35,000 Ukrainians were rescued through evacuation corridors. Up ahead, the World Health Organization confirms a hybrid version of the Delta and Omicron variants. And COMELEC Commissioner George Garcia is taking his hands off the cases involving Bongbong Marcos and 3 other presidential candidates. Details next.
Pandemic, serving others is the best. Sa pagtutulungan, patuloy ang ating laban sa buhay. Kaya dapat always healthy. With proper diet, exercise, and MX3 Coffee Mix to ignite my day. Hi guys! Lagi akong focused, active, at extraordinary. Because the most important things in life deserve nothing less. MX3 Coffee Mix, my choice.
Uy! May free delivery! Basta McDo free delivery, di kailangan pag-isipan. Diretso na sa new McDelivery app. Sarap! Download now!
2022 elections. How votes are counted and winners are declared. Voting machines automatically count each ballot. The results are then printed as the election return and sent electronically to the city or municipal board of canvassers. The district or provincial board of canvassers will then canvass the votes for president, vice president, senators, members of the House of Representatives, and elective provincial officials. Once complete, the board will produce the certificate of canvass votes. The certificate of canvass will then be transmitted to the COMELEC for senators and party list representatives, and to the Congress for the president and vice president. The certificates of canvass will be used as the basis for proclaiming winning candidates.
Welcome back. While COVID-19 cases are dropping, the World Health Organization says it is now studying a hybrid version of the Delta and Omicron variants. The recombinant has been detected in France, Denmark, and the Netherlands. The WHO says the Delta-Omicron combination is not surprising given the intense circulation and mutations of both variants. It adds it has not seen any change in its severity so far.
We do expect to see recombinants because this is what viruses do. They change over time. We're seeing a very intense level of circulation. We are seeing this virus infect animals with the possibility of infecting humans again. So again, the pandemic is far from over.
Today marks the start of the fourth round of the national vaccination drive. COVID-19 shots are available in doctors' clinics and workplace health facilities in the next 3 days. House-to-house vaccinations also underway. Health officials say vaccinators will also bring the doses to other areas such as churches, jails, and air and seaports.
We will do everything to continue access improvement, no, for our people. Para nang sa ganon, makamit natin yung 80% of our target population to be vaccinated fully, which is equivalent to 90 million Filipinos. Okay? So, while we haven't reached that, the possibility of another surge will always be there.
The government aims to vaccinate about 1.8 million people until Sunday. Newly appointed COMELEC Commissioner George Garcia is stepping back from cases involving his former clients, Bongbong Marcos, and 3 other presidential candidates. That's amid concerns of a possible conflict of interest. Melissa Lopez reports.
Veteran election lawyer George Garcia starts his term as poll commissioner with gestures meant to build public confidence in the COMELEC just 2 months before voting day. His first act is to take his hands off petitions that involve past clients, including 4 presidential bets.
I wrote a letter po, address sa ating clerk of court, na sinasabi ko itong mga kasong ito, in-enumerate ko ang lahat ng mga cases na hindi ako magpaparticipate at po ng kaso ni former Senator Bongbong Marcos. I will likewise write a letter to the clerk of court stating that I will not participate in any way dito sa mga cases.
Garcia represented former Senator Bongbong Marcos in his 2016 electoral protest. He also previously worked with Senators Manny Pacquiao and Ping Lacson, and most recently with Manila Mayor Isko Moreno. Like new Chairman Saidamen Pangarungan and Commissioner Amy Neri, Garcia presents himself as an independent and fair poll executive.
But definitely I'll do everything, itatrabaho, magpapakahirap. Kasi nga, isipin nyo na lang, pag itong election na ito hindi naging successful, do you think may pag-asa pa kami ma-confirm? Diba?
Garcia attended his first unbanked meeting on Wednesday, bringing 2 major reforms on the table. First, he wants to revisit COMELEC's new rule on requiring campaign permits for in-person gatherings, saying there's room to relax measures, especially with declining COVID-19 cases. Second, he is asking to review the controversial Operation Baklas in light of the Supreme Court's TRO.
Hanggat hindi po nagka-clarify o decision ng Korte Suprema, in the meantime po, then we will have to abide definitely with the Supreme Court restraining order. Personally po, ang sabi ko, private property should be outside the regulation of the Commission on Elections.
Garcia also says he can assist a group of teachers who are calling for tax-free benefits and honoraria on their pay as poll workers come May.
1,000 pesos ang itinaas, pero yung ibabawas naman sa tax namin ay 1,400. Nasaan ang lohika nun?
The 7-member unbank has only 8 weeks left to deliver these reforms, along with final preparations for the May 9 polls. Melissa Lopez, CNN Philippines.
An update on the presidential candidates 60 days before the Filipino votes. Senator Ping Lacson is among those being considered for endorsement by the ruling party, PDP Laban. Now, that revelation coming from Parañaque Mayor Edwin Olivares, the Cusi faction's vice president for NCR. The faction had endorsed the vice presidential bid of Davao City Mayor Sara Duterte.
In terms of qualification, wala po tayong masasabi kay Senator Ping. Mula nung nasa PNP siya, ilang term ng bilang senator natin. Ang problem lang po namin, I belong to the party ng PDP. So, i-convene namin po before the 25 ulit yung National Executive Committee through consultation po namin sa aming mga chapter PDP natin. Tapos magkakaroon po ng official statement. At andun po si Senator Ping, isa po sa tinitingnan po for endorsement for President ng PDP.
The camp of Vice President Leni Robredo hits back at what it says is red tagging of her campaign rallies. Robredo's spokesperson Barry Gutierrez says red tagging masked as concern is, quote, a new low. The statement comes as Lacson insists Robredo's campaign rally in Cavite was infiltrated by communists based on the information he got from a supposed rebel beach surrenderee. Lacson says his team is also verifying whether communists were also present in Robredo's sorties in Iloilo and Bulacan. Labor leader Leody de Guzman renewing his calls to scrap the oil deregulation law to ease the burden of the transportation sector and ordinary workers amid the oil price hike.
Pangalagaan ng gobyerno, proteksyonan ng gobyerno, hindi yung mga korporasyon ng langis, kundi yung mamamayan. At ang isang paraan, makialam siya, huwag niya ipaubaya sa negosyo ng mga korporasyon ng langis yung pagtatakda ng presyo.
Senator Manny Pacquiao warns scammers who use his name for money-making schemes could face jail time. He's looking into offering a cash reward for information that could lead to their arrests. Manila Mayor Isko Moreno in favor of postponing the barangay elections this December, saying the money is better used to provide aid to people amid the oil price hike. Meanwhile, his running mate Willie Ong proposing an interagency task force to handle the effects of a possible nuclear war amid Russia's invasion of Ukraine.
Gino-volunteer ko na sarili ko. Ako na lang mag-head. Diba? Kalimutan na natin itong eleksyon. Ako muna head, hindi na tayo makahintay ng July eh. Bibili na natin yung potassium iodide. Diba? Ire-ready na natin yung mga tao. Tuturuan na natin kung anong gagawin.
The tandem of Bongbong Marcos and Sara Duterte says church leaders are embracing the UniTeam's call for unity. The statement comes after Marcos and Duterte met with Bishop Leopoldo Haushan of the Diocese of Bangued in Abra and Bishop Ted Malangen of the Jesus Christ the Deliverer Church in Bulacan. The Marcos camp this week urged the Catholic clergy to stop meddling in politics. In an interview with talk show host Boy Abunda, Marcos's wife reveals the former senator decided to run for the presidency while watching a Marvel movie.
You know, 6 months ago, he wasn't yet sure what to do. We had no party, no. And then one day we're watching Ant-Man in the room. And then he looked, because we love Marvel movies. And then he looked at me and he goes, okay, we're going to do this. He told me. I said, do what? Run for the presidency.
Ant-Man tells the story of a former convicted thief who turned into an Avenger with the ability to shrink to a tiny size. More stories ahead. It's a big night for BTS ARMYs. The first of 3 Permission to Dance on Stage Seoul concerts has kicked off. And another highly anticipated feature, the trailer for the new Star Wars spin-off show is out. Keep it here on CNN Philippines.
With this new Galaxy S lineup, we are set to bring the epic standard for premium smartphones. We have created an entirely new Galaxy mobile experience with the Galaxy S22 Ultra. And for the first time, the S series will have the Galaxy's signature S Pen built-in. Now, for those who want devices that fuel creativity and self-expression, the Galaxy S22 and Galaxy S22 Plus can help make every moment epic. We also welcome a new addition into our ecosystem, the Tab S8. Premium cameras, super fast connectivity, batteries that last you all day, and of course, innovative new ways to share. And that is everything that the Galaxy brand is known for.
Welcome back. Hollywood actress Jennifer Garner got netizens feeling nostalgic with his 13 going on 30 reunion post. It features a frame from the popular 2004 film, which Garner recreated with co-star Mark Ruffalo in their new movie. You can catch the duo together again on The Adam Project, streaming on Netflix by tomorrow. Also, the talk of netizens' worldwide sensation BTS bringing live music back to their home base. The K-pop group's first Seoul concert in over 2 years is underway. It is the first of 3 permission to dance on stage shows in South Korea's capital, but fans here at home don't have to miss out. Saturday's event will be played in select SM cinemas, while shows tonight and on Sunday will be live streamed. Find out more about the legendary Jedi Master in the latest Star Wars spin-off series. Disney Plus just unveiled its first trailer for Obi-Wan Kenobi, which connects the franchise's prequel and original trilogies. The teaser features a young Luke Skywalker and the return of more beloved characters. Take a look.
Jedi cannot help what they are. Their compassion leaves a trail.
Obi-Wan Kenobi comes out on Disney Plus on May 25th. The streaming platform is not yet available in the Philippines. But what can we already watch? A computer-animated coming-of-age story and a star-studded action comedy flick hit local cinemas this week. Christine Jacob gives us a peek.
I'm starting to imagine a life without bodyguarding. This really feels like a new
A-lister Samuel L. Jackson and Ryan Reynolds are bringing the action and the laughs again in Hitman's Wife's Bodyguard. The sequel to the 2017 film brings us back Reynolds' character, a bodyguard who is ready to live a quiet life. But then he's forced to team up once more with this hitman, played by Jackson, and this hitman's wife, portrayed by the pretty Salma Hayek, to stop a madman from launching a terror attack on Europe. Well, that's kind of relatable these days. The film also features familiar faces, Antonio Banderas and Morgan Freeman.
You nearly got me killed. Not enough.
May, breakfast is ready. A spunky 13-year-old girl is at the center of the Pixar-produced and Disney-distributed film Turning Red. The movie, directed by Domi Shi, in her feature debut, tells the story of Mei Li, who, by the way, is Chinese-Canadian and simply a dutiful daughter to her mother. However, there's something more to being a teenager, as Mei Li, to her fluffy surprise, finds out she magically turns into a giant red panda whenever she gets too excited. That's really interesting.
Mama's girls. It's gonna be me.
That was Christine Jacob with the latest in theaters. And that is it for now. Join me again on News.ph at 7 p.m. I'm Pia Ontiveros for Newsnight, where we go above and beyond the headlines. The country has gone to great lengths to empower women and close the gender gap in public service and business. But hurdles remain, especially in legal and economic equality, as the country shows little progress on rights concerning parenthood, marriage, and assets. According to the World Bank, these are issues worthy of the attention of our next leaders. But speaking of elections, surveys show re-electionist mayors and their relatives are leading local races here in Metro Manila by a margin, while the vice mayoral contest appears more cutthroat. And at the national level, presidential bet Bongbong Marcos and running mate Sara Duterte maintain their leads in surveys come May 9th. Will these numbers translate to actual votes, or is there more that these surveys fail to capture? Good evening. I'm Pia Ontiveros. Welcome to your weekly political appointment fix. Politics as usual. We have 3 topics tonight and 3 guests. One guest for each topic, so we need to begin now. In celebration of Women's Day, let's first talk about issues facing Filipino women. Joining me tonight is Senator Pia Cayetano. Good evening, Senator. And right before we start, but we only have, like I wanted to remind you, 7.5 to 8 minutes only. Just before we start, I wanted you to address the question. People on Twitter reacting to your guesting tonight about women's issues and women's rights here in the Philippines, talking about how your relationship with President Duterte impacts on that.
Well, good evening first to everyone, and hello, my katukayo, Pia. I'm always happy to have the opportunity to answer that question. I've explained this many times. I have I don't know if you call it unenviable position where I have known the president since 2004. And when he ran for the president, I became kind of the takbuhan of the team to talk to him when it comes to women's issues. And everybody around the team can vouch for that I would always be whispering to him, telling him na, Sir, Mayor, hindi ho gender-friendly yung sinabi nyo, hindi ho appropriate to say these things. Alam niya yan. And he even made a statement one time that I was sitting in a forum in front of him, and you can really tell na magmumura siya. Like 5 times, 6 times. And later on he said, napipigilan ko yung sarili ko kasi nakikita ko dyan si Senator Pia. So that's been my role, no? Nakokontrol ko ba yung sinasabi niya? Hindi ko nakokontrol. Hindi naman ako EA niya, hindi naman ako PA niya. I have my own job as a senator. Yeah. But I'm proud to say that I've done my part in trying to help him express himself in a more appropriate way. And I'm also happy that I have been able to get past legislation that support women. And one of the most important ones during this term is the 105 maternity leave days law. That languished, and there were so many opponents when I was a member of the House.
Right.
Ang daming kumukontra, businessmen ayaw. Napapasa ko yun kasi kinausap ko.
Businessmen ayaw dahil nga, and thank you pala for your response to that President Duterte question, and we've gotten that out of the way.
Ayaw nila
kasi
dagdag daw sa ano nila, sa babayaran nila kung may maternity leave. But
umaaray nga sila sa isa't kalahating buwang maternity leave. Ano pa kaya yung 105?
Yeah, 105 days. Pero it's taken out of the SS naman eh. So, di ba, private employees pay their SS. So, dun lang kinukuha yun. Wala naman dinadagdag, no? So, covered na yan. And right now, wala nang nagre-reklamo. Hanggang ngayon, libo-libong kababaihan, taon-taon ang nakikinabang. And they're always grateful for it because more time with your infant makes you more productive pagbalik mo sa office. Alam natin yan, mga nanay tayo.
Yes,
diba?
yes. I remember coming back from maternity leave after 1.5 months and you feel like parang bitin
yung baby mo, iniwan mo yung baby mo,
Saya yan.
baby pa siya, di ba? But the difference between, ako naman 60 days, the difference between 60 days and 105, medyo 3.5 months na yung baby. And by the way, may 30 days additional yon pero hindi ka na paid. Yung 105 is paid.
Okay. Let's talk about other measures to advance the welfare of women. You are, midterm, so you're going to be senator for the next 3 years. What else would you like to do for women, to close the gender gap, to give women more of what's needed?
Yeah. Well, the Philippines has topped the rankings in various not really sure. Yeah, well, surveys that were done. One is by the World Bank, another one is by the World Economic Forum. We're usually in the top. Sa World Bank, ang grade natin doon is something like 78%, which is even more than the median. And then doon naman sa World Economic Forum, we were ranked in the top 10 until 2018, and then nag-slip tayo ng konti, but we're still in the top 20. So it means based on the laws that we passed, and yun naman yung trabaho ko, laws,
Right.
the laws are there. As to the implementation, then that goes back to culture and education. So I hate to hear na, kasi ganun naman ang kultura. Yeah, but if it's wrong, it's wrong. You have to change it. But I understand that that takes time. So you go to the education process. You help them understand. And let me talk about the reproductive health law.
Right.
Wala daw sa kultura natin na gumamit ng contraceptives. Siguro if you look back 200 years ago, wala naman kasing contraceptives nung panahon na yon, di ba? So wala talaga sa kultura before all over the world. But then it becomes acceptable. You teach them how to use it in a responsible way. And over time, it becomes part also of our culture. So yun ang paniniwala ko na there are still things we need to do, but it goes back to educating the young. And I'm not to empower girls. It's not just educating girls. It's educating girls and boys. It's a gender partnership.
Right, girls and
Parang-
boys, very important.
Nagpe-preach lang tayo to the choir, Pia, if ine-empower lang natin yung girls, tapos naman yung counterpart nila na boys, yung mga kaklase nila na boys, yung mga manliligaw sa kanila na boys, yung future boyfriends nila, hindi naman din na-empower to support women in power. And can I just quickly say that one of the problems that we will foresee, and this has already been documented in research, that as women become more educated and have more jobs, nagkakaroon din ng difficulty to find good relationships because nangyayari talaga na may parang insecurity din ang ibang lalaki. Not all, and I love a man who can love an empowered woman, but these are things we have to face, no? So I love it when I see young boys na proud sila sa sister nila na athlete, na sister nila na debater, kasi then I know that they will grow up to be young gentlemen and men who will respect women for what they can do.
Let's talk, we only have about 2 minutes to go, Senator Pia. Let's talk about the elephant in the room, in this country, I mean, no? Divorce. Every time that's brought up, no one really wants to touch it with a 10-foot pole. And, you bring it up in a debate, it gets a little bit sticky.
And I will.
Yeah. Oh, so what are we going to do? Because, okay, so we have annulment, church annulment, etc. But, there are a lot of women who parang need more than that.
Yes. Seriously ko tong inaral. I went to 3 countries na marami tayong OFWs. Malaysia, and then Indonesia, and then Hong Kong. Sorry, Malaysia, Hong Kong, and Japan. Kasi ang dami nating OFW. Like in Japan, matagal na silang hiwalay sa asawa nila. Resident na sila doon. And yet, they are legally bound. Kung ano yung kinikita nila in Japan, yung asawa nilang lalaki, may misis ng iba, may anak ng iba, wala nang pakialam sila. But lahat ng kinikita nila, their husband owns part of it. Tama ba yun? Tama ba yun? Yun lang naman ang pinaglalaban ko. With all due respect to the religious groups, I am so much for marriage. I am so much for the sanctity of marriage. But there are instances na kailangan naman natin bigyan ng legal protection ang babae and sometimes ang lalaki to have a way to graciously and legally end that marriage.
It's good you emphasize that, babae at yung lalaki, because
Meron
there
din
are
naman,
also
of course.
men who need more than an annulment. And of course, that's a whole, that's another entire issue, when we talk about relationships. Okay, we have, we need to wrap up already. So, Senator Pia, can you give us just final words, no? Mothers, single mothers especially, during the pandemic, the predicament of that, more economic opportunities for them, because that is another reality. We have single mothers, and for that matter, single fathers also.
Yes. Work from home. The pandemic has shown us that work from home is possible, and it escalated in a grand way the work from home mechanism. And now many women, and sabi mo nga, Pia, lalaki din, have that experience of working from home, and that brings about many opportunities for them to fulfill their dual role as mother or caregiver, baka hindi mother, pero nag-aalaga ng lola, nag-aalaga ng may sakit. So their dual role as caregiver and breadwinner in the family. So work from home is a result of the pandemic. I mean, is something that came out of the pandemic, which is feasible, and we must support it in every way we can. It has also revealed our gaps because access to healthcare and access to childcare has become worse during the pandemic.
Right.
So nakita natin, and it gives us more reason to support it. At another time, I can elaborate on that, but
Yes.
I think that's the most important things we can do. And then fulfill the sustainable development goals, because believe it or not, something like sustainable transportation. Yung 4 na oras mo nasa traffic ka, kung in 30 minutes nakauwi ka, edi mas may time ka maging nanay, mas may time ka sa anak mo, di ba? So
Right.
sustainable transportation, sustainable cities affect women and how they perform their jobs.
Senator Pia Cayetano, thank you very much for your time tonight. We'll
Thank
be
you very
back
much.
after a quick break. Stay tuned. This is Politics as Usual. Welcome back to Politics as Usual. On to local politics. Here in Metro Manila, a survey showing re-electionist mayors and their relatives leading by a wide gap against their opponents. Let's talk to lobby and campaign group Publicus Asia's David Yap for more. David, thank you very much for being with us tonight. So what explains this? And I wanted to take a wild guess, and then you can correct me if I'm wrong. Number one, it's a midterm election. Number two, most are gunning for a second term. Or taking over from their relative, close relative. And number three, most if not all of them, Metro Manila LGUs did very well in their pandemic response.
Yes, correct. So just as an introduction for your viewers, our survey numbers suggest that incumbent mayors, as well as the relatives of incumbent mayors, as you mentioned, appear to be ahead of their closest rivals by statistically significant margins, at least at this point in time. It is important to emphasize, however, that these numbers do not guarantee victories for incumbents. We have to be cognizant of sampling variation and view these numbers from a stochastic perspective rather than a deterministic perspective. There remains a lot of uncertainty, especially when sampling is involved. It is also important to emphasize that a lot can still happen between now and May 9th. Particularly in local elections where candidates are still waiting for the official start of the local campaign period. So incumbents typically hold advantages over their competitors because of familiarity, which includes name recall and brand recognition. People are used to them, people are familiar with them, and in some cases, their families. They've amassed tremendous amounts of social capital over the years and are often capable of leveraging these stores of capital effectively and efficiently during elections. And as you pointed out earlier, the pandemic brought even more opportunities for incumbents. So as Winston Churchill once said, never let a good crisis go to waste. In the case of COVID, LGUs engaged in the large-scale provision of dole-outs, medical assistance, testing kits, and perhaps most importantly, vaccines. As was shown in our 2020 survey tracker series, specifically for COVID, some LGUs performed extremely well throughout the pandemic, notching high performance ratings throughout the survey period, while others started out slow but eventually got up to speed. In general, most LGUs in the NCR ultimately performed well, at least according to respondents and the overall vaccination rate in the region. At any rate, the crux of the matter is that reciprocity is a powerful motivating force among humans, and people are wired to repay one good turn with another. It is not a stretch to think that at least some voters would remember the assistance given to them by incumbents at some point during the pandemic when they look at their ballots on May 9.
David, I wanted to talk about the most notable figures here. No? So let's begin with Vico Soto. I mean, wow, just wow, 92%. And he doesn't, well, of course, I mean, his uncle, Tito Soto, no, showbiz and everything. But he's really gotten a lot of positive, very good feedback, right, in his first term. And is that is why he's 92%? I mean, no one else, I mean, well, apart from Wes Gatchalian, whose brother Rex is doing a musical chairs with him, 85% si Wes for Valenzuela, Abby Binay Makati, 68%, pero 92%.
I think that is a testament to how he has thus far performed as Pasig City Mayor. So if we're looking at the numbers, I would go so far as to say that he has managed to sustain the momentum that he used to get him into the mayoralty position. And it also doesn't hurt that he has good rapport with both local and national media. So I think that those are huge factors in his present popularity. And I think it's also important to consider that he is only gunning for his second term. And people thus far appear to be receptive of the reforms, the programs, the projects that he has put forward for the people of Pasig. And I think that is a huge reason behind his, in this case, survey topping numbers.
I mentioned already Wes Gatchalian and Abby Binay, so Valenzuela and Makati. Of course, the names are very familiar, so Gatchalian, Binay, and I know you've done a lot of studies about political dynasties, and it can come out of our ears already. Political dynasties, year in, year out, election year in, election year out, pre-Marcos, post-Marcos. Ano pa bang, what else is new? So talk to us about that dynamic. The dynasties, and yet these people are leading in these surveys?
That's an excellent question, Pia. I would just like to preface my response by saying that it is actually instructive to point out that a strong argument can be made that dynasties proliferated after the imposition of term limits. Term limits, in essence, forced career politicians to find ways to circumvent the limitations of the law. Tasking their relatives to run for office proved an elegant and effective solution for the particular problem that they faced.
Seat warmers ang tawag.
This is a lesson that has to be kept firmly in mind when considering imposing laws that would prohibit political dynasties, just as an important aside. But going back to the question, when talking about dynasties, it is important to be wary of fundamental attribution error and avoid underestimating external and situational factors that are at play. While it is true that many of the leading candidates can be viewed to belong to political dynasties, insisting that they are leading only because of their last names reduces an unambiguously multivariate problem into a univariate problem. But simply, there are other considerations, which of course includes things such as performance, charisma, and the alternatives on offer.
Yeah, well, performance, yes, they did perform well, right?
Yes.
Rex Gatchalian or the brother Abby as mayor of,
So I think it's also important to give voters more credit for their choices. I am inclined to believe that it is kind of unfair to insist that they only look at the last names of candidates. I, for one, would like to think that they put in a lot of effort in coming up with their election-related decisions.
And rightly so. Okay, sa vice mayoral race naman, you're saying that medyo mas close ito. What would explain that? Oh, sorry. Before we go to the vice mayor, I just wanted to ask one question about Marikina. So you have Marcy Teodoro running for re-election, 62%. Medyo comfortable na rin. But he's running against a former Marikina politician, very well known, who himself did well as mayor of Marikina, Bayani Fernando. So, how do we understand that?
Since I'm not particularly from Marikina, I would chalk it up to recency bias. While it is true that Bayani Fernando was a famous politician during his time, and particularly in Marikina, where he instituted a lot of reforms, you're looking at the incumbency advantage yet again, combined with the recency bias. So people are more familiar, and when you consider, again, when we go back to the pandemic, you consider who was there during the pandemic. I would make the argument that it was Mayor Teodoro, who the people were seeing constantly.
What else would you like to share with us, David, when it comes, para ang takeaway natin dito on this study by Publicus Asia on the Metro Manila mayor's mayoral and vice mayoral candidates?
Well, for starters, there is still a lot of time. The campaign period for local officials is still a couple of weeks away, around 2.5 weeks away.
March
So
10th.
there are still a lot of changes that could happen, and it's still anyone's game. But of course, when you're looking at these numbers, you're going to give the advantage, at least at this point in time, to incumbents.
Still anyone's game, even in the case of Pasig with 92% for Vico. Parang
as-
wow, how do you overturn that?
Well, fortunately, it is. Well, in my case, fortunately, it's not my problem. But best of luck to all the candidates.
Yeah. All right. Thank you so much, David Yap of Publicus Asia. Thank you for being with us tonight on this, your first guesting on the show. I hope to see you back here again. Salamat.
All right.
More from our guests when we return. This is Politics as Usual. We're in our final stretch. This is Politics as Usual. On to national politics. Let's talk about the latest presidential and vice presidential surveys. And, well, the whole issue of surveys with UP School of Statistics Associate Professor Francisco Kiko de los Reyes. Professor Kiko, thank you very much. Of course, our takeoff point is that statement of the UP School of Statistics about surveys. No, but let's not talk about that. But let's go, not just that, but offshoots of that. So let's go straight to this question. No? We talk about credibility, which, and for me, the question is, and I want you to answer this as straight and as direct as possible because it will be helpful to our viewers, which survey firms are credible. And I am going to be reading from a list prepared by Dr. Toots Albert, and it is in his PowerPoint presentation. So, of course, when I say the name of the survey firm, you just say yes or no. Okay, so Pulse Asia.
For me, yes.
Social Weather Stations, SWS.
For me, yes.
Ibon.
I have not seen their survey, sorry.
Okay. But considered a survey for Okta Research.
Is that the Twitter survey? If it's the
Okta?
Twitter survey,
No,
yeah,
Okta?
they did a Twitter survey eh. So, meron akong reservation with Twitter surveys.
Okay, but if kung hindi Twitter, okay lang. Basta,
Yes, if it's done
this
in a
is the
random
Okta Research
sampling.
Group eh.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
If they did it in the random sampling way, yes.
Okay. And we're gonna bring up the graphics para makita ng viewers natin yung mga pangalan. Yeah, I'm just addressing our control. There we go. DigiVoice.
I haven't seen that, sorry.
Oh, okay. Publicus Asia. I was just speaking to David Yap of Publicus Asia. We were talking about the NCR mayor and mayoralty and vice mayoralty races.
I have reservations.
Bosses Pilipinas.
I haven't heard it.
The Strafford.
I have not heard about it.
MBC Manila Broadcasting Company. They do surveys.
I'm not familiar
Pass.
with them.
Pass. RMN.
Pass.
Pass.
What's that?
RMN.
It's if it's random sampling, that's the point. The statement is actually not a witch hunt. Let me clarify,
Yes,
it's not a
yes.
witch hunt.
Oo.
But we want to say is dapat nirerespeto yung mga prinsipyo ng sampling, ng random
Right.
sampling, random selection, and that's
Oo.
it. So if these companies are openly saying that they're doing that, then that's fine, right?
okay.
But if
We're
they
gonna-
don't
yes.
share,
Yes,
the
we're going to get to
methodology,
design and
that's where-
mythology. Yes, we'll
Yeah.
get to design and mythology in just a bit, but we don't have
Yes.
much time. So very quickly, and then Lilo. They've been doing surveys, similar results to Pulse and SWS. You wanna pass
Honestly, I haven't encountered
Okay.
the
Okay.
results.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Oo. Now, the ones you said, for example, Pulse, Asia, and SWS, so obviously they're the ones with the track record, meaning that they've correctly predicted
Yes.
the results,
True.
the outcome of elections, right? Now,
Yes.
the list obviously excludes surveys on social media, Facebook, kanina, nabanggit yun na, Twitter, Viber surveys, even Kalya surveys. And precisely
Yes.
because what you're saying here is wala kasing design and methodology
Correct.
yan, right?
Correct.
Okay. Pero may isang sinabi a few weeks ago. I was interviewing Coco Pimentel on this show, and we were talking about the survey frontrunner, BBM, and he was saying, pandemic surveys kasi, so merong mga parang questionable. Is that something that we
Oo
should
naman.
keep in our minds? No, because
Totoo
like
yun,
Pulse,
kasi-
SWS,
Ang laki ng problema natin with penetrating the barangays, So parang baseline nga, parang benchmark nga namin 30% ng mga communities hindi talaga nape-penetrate nung surveys na ito. So that itself constrains the random sampling procedure. So that particular time, it's takot yung mga taong humarap sa kapwa niya tao kasi dapat face to face yan So it's really very difficult to do that. And sino lang yung magpapa-interview, diba? Yung malakas lang yung loob. So posibleng merong correlation yung kanyang mga sagot doon sa lakas ng loob niya, right?
Okay.
So that itself is another explanation bakit.
So we can expect that as things normalize, quote unquote,
Yes.
then perhaps we can get a better picture that the surveys will give us, right? Now,
I'm positive about it. Yeah,
Okay.
I'm positive about it.
All
Yes,
right.
as things normalize, people will tend to be accommodating of surveys, and the companies themselves can now have this truthful, adherence to the methodology, to the parang may plano kasi yan So dapat nasusunod nila yan even the intervals that they have to respect, they have to do that. A properly trained person, an interviewer will do that.
Okay, I'm not sure if this is a fair question for you, but I hope you can still address this. No? So design and methodology pinag-uusapan. Why only 1,200 and not bigger? Because bigger is not better ba? Tapos merong paces, di ba? Then you turn left or right, that's and then demeanor of the interviewer. That's so important, right?
Correct. Yes. So 1,200 is actually mathematically good, but it has to be interpreted at a certain layer. So if the layer is national, di ba? Tapos halimbawa mga stand-alone na mga percentages sa socio-economic class or broad region, okay na yon. But you cannot use the 1,200 to have a cross-classification. Di ba yung parang kino-cross-classify mo siya like lalaki from NCR, hindi na pwede magawa yun pag 1,200. So the bigger the sample, the more understanding you get from the sample itself. So bigger is not necessarily better, but in the understanding of the layers, mas maganda yung mas malaki ng kaunti. Pero hindi naman talaga super laki yan. So yung 1,200, okay na 2,400 na or 3,000 na. Later on, you will see surveys na 6,000. Diba? Okay na yon. Hindi talaga proportionate yun talaga dapat dun sa 60 plus million voters natin.
Okay, and a final question to you and a final brief answer from you because like you've always said, a survey is a snapshot in time. It is a guide. You also use the word liwanag, no? A lighthouse to guide the campaign. Yes. But also, we are told not to vote according to surveys. Professor Kiko?
Yes. Surveys only signify what is the current, what is the now. Your vote must be dependent on what you believe, what you research, no? Ayoko ngang sabihin palagi, pero sasabihin ko na rin, irespeto mo yung sarili mo. Pumili ka dahil sa yun ang decision mo. Ang pangit pumili na nag-decide yung iba para sa iyo, no? So don't let yourself be swayed by what the surveys say. Decide on your own and cast that vote. Right? I say that from your own self, no? Respect yourself, cast that vote, decide for yourself.
All right, Professor Kiko de los Reyes of the UP School of Statistics, thank you very much for being with us tonight. We've been told before, don't talk politics at the dinner table or the family reunion or in Viber groups and risk digital warfare, but we can talk about it here at this table on this show, your weekly political appointment fix. Politics as usual. I'm Pia Ontiveros. See you back here next Tuesday, 8:30 p.m.